Our doctors have rejected President Uhuru Kenyatta's 40% pay rise after a meeting with their advisory council. This essentially means that the doctors' strike will continue as negotiations continue on the demands being made by the doctors. The union met members of its National Advisory Council and was expected to meet government officials at the Treasury to seek an end to the stalemate that has crippled the health sector in the country. There has been a stalemate due to the government's failure to implement the CBA and instead offering the 40% pay rise.
We reiterate again that the basic document for negotiation is the CBA, and we request the authorities that this be accepted. Once the CBA is accepted as the basis for negotiation, then the matrix of implementation can be negotiated. But I don't think the idea of negotiating outside the CBA, in our opinion, is negotiable.
We have remained at our workplaces until the 5th of December. The government signed a document. Remember, we are calling it collective, between the government and the doctors. Bargaining, it was bargained and agreed. That's why it's called a collective bargaining agreement, signed in 2011. Then the government went in 2013. Then the government went on strike. Now it is our time to go on strike. So the government to do its part.
As you are aware, the talks continue. From here, we are going for the talks. And as we have said, the talks will continue.
Right, let's speak to our reporter, Timothy Otieno, who has been following this story for us and got the update from the doctors this morning. And of course, Timothy, the question that many Kenyans would be asking this afternoon is, isn't this deal good enough? And what exactly is in that CBA that is not, represented in this latest offer by the State House?
Well, Sharon, basically good enough, but perhaps not so good enough for the doctors who insist that they are not going to be talking about any other thing except what was signed in the 2013 collective bargaining agreement that I have here with me that promised them a 300% pay increase that would have seen the lowest earning doctor, that's an intern doctor who currently earns about 35,000 shillings minus allowances, get about 121,000 shillings. Now, what the government had tabled on Wednesday at State House Mombasa would have increased that salary up by just 40%. So it still falls way short of what the doctors have been fighting for and what has made them down their tools for 33 days now. And of course, they are insisting that it's not all about the money, but there are other things that they have been pushing for and fighting for that were in this document on remuneration and job promotions. Some of them insist that they have been in the same job group for nearly a decade. So according to them, it extends beyond the salaries and the allowances and more into other issues such as training. For instance, they want the postgraduate students to receive sponsors, to receive funding for their postgraduate studies from the government and the Ministry of Health, something that was not really highlighted in detail in Wednesday's meeting. So their issue is whatever was proposed at State House Mombasa on Wednesday was rather vague, did not look too serious, and was not far much different from what had been proposed by the government in the past. If you remember last month, around mid-December, they had also held several talks between doctors' unions and the Ministry of Health, and these were deliberations that were mediated by the Ministry of Labour, led by the Cabinet Secretary Phyllis Kandie, that offered pretty much the same, a 50,000 increase in the current salary. What was offered on Wednesday was 56,000 more to the basic pay. So what was offered is basically what the doctors have rejected in the past, and perhaps the government was hoping that perhaps by this offer coming from the head of state himself, it would perhaps change the hearts and the tune that has been sung by the doctors' union officials over the last month or so. It appears it hasn't changed. They have rejected Wednesday's deal that came from the president, and right now they are actually in a meeting at the National Treasury with the CS for National Treasury, Henry Rotich, as well as Cleopa Mailu, the Cabinet Secretary for Health, they insist that they still remain open to deliberations, but they will accept nothing short of what was signed on June 2013. That was the collective bargaining agreement that would have seen them get a 300% pay increase. So as it stands, the doctors will continue staying out of hospitals, meaning Kenyans still have to go without that much needed medical assistance in public institutions as it stands. Sharon.
Right. Many thanks, Timothy Otieno, for that detailed report on the state of the doctors' strike. Of course, just clarifying that what the doctors want is exactly what they had demanded, or rather had actually come to an agreement, in agreement together with the government. That was in 2013, that what they were asking for is not just an increment in their salaries, but also their working conditions. It remains to be seen whether these negotiations will lead to an agreement on both sides. Let's